Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning or this afternoon, whenever it is that you're watching. Today, I have Lori Biseby, and we will know what it is exactly that she does. We have a fantastic topic that we're going to be discussing today, and it's one of the biggest hits on the website, divorcemagazine.co.uk. And so we'll be discussing it. We'll tell you in a minute what it is about. In the meantime, my name is Soila. I am the founder and editor of the divorcemagazine.co.uk. It's a place where you can go when you're going through divorce, and you can learn all about coping and dealing with divorce. So, Lori, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well this morning, thanks.
Okay, so Lori, could you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then can get into our discussion?
I'm a psychologist and I'm a relationship coach. I do a lot of work with people who are in the midst of relationships who want to create a good, vibrant, long-lasting relationship, with people who are trying to find that right relationship and create that right atmosphere, and also with folks who are struggling within their relationships and hoping to repair relationships that seem to have broken down. I also work with people to help them resolve issues if they decide that they are going to separate or divorce.
Okay, all right. And you've been doing it for quite a while now, Lori, haven't you? The whole relationship thing.
Yeah, for about 28 years.
Yeah, there you go. So you do know what you're talking about.
I should hope so.
I hope so too. So today we'll be talking about one huge question we talked about yesterday over lunch before we decided to do the interview. And it's, can my marriage survive infidelity, or can my marriage survive adultery? We know that it happens, adultery happens, cheating happens. Some people manage to go, to live through it and go through it, and some it is a breaking point, and that's it. It's that's the end. It's a deal breaker. So what would you say, just about infidelity, Lori, and adultery in general?
I'd say not all infidelity is equal.
Okay, explain.
Well, because situations that cause infidelity are different and types of infidelity are different.
Okay.
For example, an ongoing affair is likely to have a far bigger impact than a one-off occurrence. Getting drunk at the office party and sleeping with the secretary or sleeping with your boss is a lot different than having an affair with somebody that's lasted over a period of time, which has required consistent lying.
Okay.
It's the dishonesty that causes the problem more than the fact that there's actually been intimacy with another person.
Okay. Lori, can you lower your volume a little bit, because I can hear myself? Okay. Thank you. So, see, that's something that it's quite a good distinction, because we always just dump the whole infidelity thing into one basket and we say it's cheating, end of story. And you don't actually consider what it is. And now there's a whole new realm of cheating, which is, emotional infidelity or online infidelity, or, all of that. Which probably we can look at in a bit. So between the two that you have mentioned, how does that pan out in real life?
In real life, I think it's much easier for couples to survive infidelity that was a one-off.
Okay.
Infidelity that's ongoing. And that includes these things when we talk about he was emotionally unfaithful or she was emotionally unfaithful. What we're talking about is this person was intimate with somebody else.
Okay.
Emotionally intimate with somebody else. They were talking about their deepest feelings. They were sharing their secrets.
Yeah.
Somebody else, and not with me. And I'm their
The
part.
one is supposed to be,
And that's why that's so damaging. Sexual infidelity can be far easier to cope with. People can find loads of ways to explain it away. They can adjust their thinking so that it's not such a big issue.
Yeah.
But when there feels like there's been an emotional betrayal, that's far harder to move past. And people do move past it, but it takes significantly more effort.
Okay. And it might sound like a really silly question, but how does that emotional infidelity come about? How does your husband or your wife decide that I'm going to confide in this person who's, of the opposite gender. Obviously, if I'm confiding in a man and I'm spending a lot of time on the phone with him and going for lunches with him, we're not sleeping together, but I'm telling him what is not working in my marriage, what my kids are doing and my friends, and we are connecting in a certain way. How does that actually even start coming about?
I mean, in my experience, a lot of times that comes about because the day-to-day routine between a couple, they stop trying.
Yeah.
They stop working at being intimate with each other. Intimacy is quite hard work. You have to be willing to take a risk. You have to be willing to say the difficult things. You have to be willing to have your partner have any reaction. In the best of all worlds, no matter what you say to your partner, they're going to hear you. They're going to be accepting of you. They're going to work with you, rather than getting very upset and pulling away, for example.
Yeah.
Being disgusted, being angry. In the best of all worlds, you hope your partner never has that reaction. In reality, people are people. And so you may tell your partner something and it strikes them as difficult, odd. You see this a lot with sexual exploration. Partner suggests a new thing and it's like, ooh. Well, just that response alone is enough to mean that they're never going to bring it up again.
That's true.
Never again. Or the partner laughs because it's uncomfortable or it's new or unusual. That's it. That can be enough for the person to say, okay, that's it. Yeah. You rejected me. I'm not talking about it again. So they find themselves in a situation, particularly online, where you're not necessarily seeing the other person. There's an anonymity. If a person rejects you, you can just never speak to them again.
Yeah. You can block them. You can walk away. You can just, you don't have to see them. Yeah.
Exactly. And so people say all sorts of things to somebody where the risk seems less because they're not close to you.
Yeah.
The risk of rejection, if I'm talking to Joe Blogs or Mary Blogs on the other side of the world, who may not even be the person that they say they are.
The lab, it's moving a little bit much, the computer, so your image is kind of like going a little bit. Yeah, and maybe just that what you said about talking to somebody in another part of the world can explain the whole catfish thing, where it ended up actually being a proper TV program where you hook up with somebody online, and some people speak and they date and they get engaged online, and when they finally get together and you open the door and you find me standing there and you're like, A, you're not a man. B, your name can't be so and so. So you look and then the other person says, but I told you everything about myself.
That's right.
I trusted you. I told you things I've never told anybody.
Yes, but if you lied about being a man, and if you lied about all the basic details of yourself, I'm not going to trust anything you told me anyway.
Yeah.
So that's a huge betrayal. But there are also a lot of situations in which it works out well.
Yes.
People meet online, but then once they're together, they've got the building blocks that they would have normally done in the dating process over time.
Yes.
To do.
Yeah. And when you have, just going back to right at the beginning, when you talked about the different types of infidelity, the one-off and the long-term one, isn't there like a third one that you could say where it's a serial cheater? So it's a one-off with Janet, it's a one-off with John, it's a one-off with Matthew, and so on. So where would that one fall? Long-term infidelity or?
That ends up being long-term infidelity, because what you're talking about is continued dishonesty.
Yes. It is with long-term.
And it is with long-term. And I think it's important to realize that couples make different arrangements about whether or not there are going to be other people in their relationships. Yeah. Many people have really intensely emotionally intimate relationships with their girlfriends.
Yes, true.
With their male friends that pre-existed their romantic relationships. But because their partners know about that, it's not a betrayal. It does become a bone of contention.
Mm.
Why have you told her all about...
Yes. Yeah.
Why have you told her all about what I look like when I get up in the morning? Why have you told her all about the fact that I have been having trouble having an erection?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
All those sorts of things.
Yeah.
It can become a bone of contention, but it's known. It's known in advance, and it's something you contract around. It's something you plan around.
Yeah.
What gets people is that sense of complete betrayal that happens when your partner does something that you feel takes away from the relationship, and dishonesty is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, yeah, just speaking about that long term part and it being, I mean, it is a huge deal when you've been, I mean, sometimes it can happen over years and years. And there are two questions that I have for that. Is it really possible that you can be with somebody who's cheating over, let's say, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you actually don't know? Or is it possible that the person is actually not looking, or is just, subconsciously, unconsciously making that, I can't see thing?
Both.
Okay. So, okay.
Both. There are situations where couples are so estranged that they don't notice.
Wow, okay.
Because they're already living a degree of separate lives. They're trusting each other. When a long-term marriage or a long-term relationship, we go through stages. We go through individual change. Mm-hmm. The person you meet when you're 20 is not the same person at 30. So there are times in relationships, natural times, where people are less intimate, less involved with each other. If there's a basic trust there, you'll often hear people say, well, I can let him get on with the growth. I can let her get on with the growth. I'm here to listen, but I don't feel a need to be part of everything. Being somebody's everything is exhausting and as a rule doesn't work. Mm. People need different kinds of relationships and intimacy from different places. Yeah. So if you've been going through a stage of growth and kind of somewhat self-involved, you've just had a child, you're involved with the child, one of your parents is ill, you're involved with that, you're gone back to school to change your career, whatever it is, and you're less intimate with your partner, you can go a year or 2 years if your partner's skilled.
Yeah, without realizing.
At lying without having any idea.
Okay, we'll go into part 2, Lori. And in part 2, we can continue with this conversation, but also a couple of questions in part 2. How do you know when your partner is cheating? Okay. And can a marriage actually,
survive that?
Yeah, survive that. Yeah. Okay.
Grand, I'll see you soon.
Okay. Okay, welcome to part 2. And like I said, I have Lori Biseby here with me today, a fantastic Dr. Biseby, who's a relationship expert. And we've been talking about, can my marriage survive infidelity, or can my marriage survive adultery? So if you haven't listened to part 1, go over, listen to part 1 and catch up with us in part 2. So Lori, we were just talking about infidelity and long-term infidelity, and the ones where it's short-term, like a one-night stand. And also you said that, with the serial cheaters where, somebody, a lady sleeps with, cheats over and over again, for example, that constitutes long-term infidelity because of the ongoing lies that happen within a relationship. One of the things that, I have loads of questions. I could go on forever about this subject because it's a huge one. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, how do you know that someone is cheating?
There are a variety of ways, but I just think of it as just think about how you know that somebody's lying.
Okay.
Because there's nothing really different about it. It doesn't usually take looking through their texts and looking through their pocket. In the old days, we didn't have texts. In the old days, people wrote down phone numbers, MacBook covers, and they were in their pockets. And yes, I am that old. So
me too.
Yeah, so people would go through there's the stereotypical, the wife is at home and going through her husband's pockets.
Briefcase, yeah.
Yeah, to try and find clues. If somebody starts suddenly taking a really big interest in how they look, and you haven't had the conversation with them about that, I would be suspicious. That's often something that happens, is that people start to care. They want to look their best because they've got a new person to impress. Yeah. If they pull away more, that's something to be concerned about. But it really is about looking at the normal things you would look for when you know somebody is lying. How do you know? They feel more distant.
Yeah.
They're doing less things with you. They're tripping themselves up on their stories.
Yeah. I think the way you put it and just said, the same way you would know if someone's lying just says it all, really. And there's always that thing, I don't know if he is, I just feel like he is, or I'm not sure if she is, it's just things that she's done or she's saying. So the big question when we started the interview was, can a marriage actually survive infidelity?
Yes, it can. It's very hard work. And I think actually the question should be, should the marriage survive infidelity? And I know that's a strange way of putting it, but infidelity is often a symptom. It's a big way of saying things are not right here. This is not working. Particularly if you knew it was a deal breaker when you started. I mean, in some couples it's not. In some couples it's not that big a deal. But if you knew when you started the relationship that the one thing the person couldn't stand was lying, and you've been lying, that usually says, look, there's something really wrong with this relationship. In those sorts of cases, people don't usually survive.
Okay.
Because what happens at that point is everything that's been wrong comes out. And unfortunately, not in an easy way to work on it.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
But in other cases, like the sort of one night stand or admitting infidelity at the beginning of a relationship, people can choose to work on it and work hard and rebuild trust, and they do survive.
And do you think, and when they go for this is, I have somebody on the divorcemagazine.co.uk who actually wrote about infidelity. And one of the things she said, or he said, because they did it anonymously, so I'm not sure if it's a he or a she, said that they don't believe that couple counseling comes into the picture because it's one person who's cheated. That when you go in as a couple to do couple counseling, so if I'm the one who's cheated and my husband says, look, we need to work on this, let's go see Lori. The person who wrote this article's view was actually he doesn't need to come because the issue is not with him, it's with me. I'm the one who needs to go and deal with my own cheating stories.
The issues in the relationship.
Okay.
There may be individual issues as well, but the issue is also in the relationship. So what I suggest is that initially go see a couples specialist.
Okay.
If the couple specialist is good, the couple will evaluate not only the relationship but the individuals and be able to give advice as to whether or not it's the individual needs to do some work. For example, I had one couple where the infidelity did go on for some time. There had been plenty of opportunities for there not to be infidelity. There had been opportunities for other partners legitimately within the relationship. And for people who don't know, there are many relationships that are polyamorous.
Yeah.
There are many relationships that are also open where couples actually contract about what kinds of interactions are okay. So despite there being all these opportunities for relationships outside of the marriage, the person chose to lie over a long period of time.
Okay.
And part of that came from a bunch of childhood issues and issues about intimacy.
Okay.
So that was an appropriate time to say, okay, well, while the couple may need to work on these certain issues, actually, the person who was lying found it impossible to communicate honestly.
Okay.
It wasn't just lying about infidelity. There was lying all over the place. She grew up in a home where lying was normal. Yeah. You didn't have conflict. What you did was you lied. I know some Asian cultures, East Asian cultures, people don't say no very easily. So what you'll get is you ask somebody to do something and they'll say yes and not do it. And the reason is because saying no is losing face.
I see. Okay.
So there's all sorts of reasons why someone may have a great deal of difficulty being upfront.
Yeah.
And in that sort of situation, before the couple could work on the issues together, she needed to get honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So she needed to go off and do her own work.
Yeah. And is it fair to say, once a cheat, always a cheat?
No.
Okay.
No. I have seen relationships end with infidelity,
Yes.
but the relationship was actually over long before that.
Yeah.
The infidelity was the clue. This is done.
That's why you said it's a symptom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was sort of, okay, I've been unfaithful. I really need out of this relationship. And the person will end the relationship, getting into another relationship and be perfectly faithful.
But
some people are serial adulterers.
Yeah.
Some people do in every relationship. Some people have difficulty with intense intimacy, so they split their intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Other people actually contract. I mean, that is always an option, is to actually have the discussion. Well, is it okay to have multiple partners? And if so, what are the rules around that? Okay. So it's not always.
Yeah, you mentioned that this contract, this discussion is something that it's one of the, when you decide, okay, hey, let's get married, where are we going to live, how many children, how are they going to be brought up? Are they going to be brought up with religion, with no religion, and all of that?
Yep.
That this discussion about other people in the relationship, that what infidelity actually means to them.
That should happen at the time that they're making all those sorts of decisions. You should be talking about not only about all of the practical issues and your values. You talk about all of your values. What are your values in relationship? What's important to you in terms of intimacy? Do you want that person to be the only person that you tell your secrets to? Or do you want, we talked about emotional infidelity, emotional adultery earlier. And it's like, well, actually, do you not want to hear your husband's worries about potency and you want him to tell that to his friend, or be it male or female?
Yeah.
Or do you want to know that you're the keeper of the secrets? Those are the sorts of things you can explore at the time that you're engaged. I work with couples when they're deciding to make a relationship long term. Then that may not actually be formally married. They may be deciding to cohabit long term. But actually sitting them down and saying, okay, so spend the same amount of time discussing the rules of your relationship. How are you going to resolve conflict? What if?
Yeah.
If I say for better or worse, what if you develop an illness that means that sexual intimacy isn't possible anymore?
Then what happens?
What then? And actually spend the time, and I've had people do it ritually and set up a special time and space over the period before they move in together or over the engagement period to actually spend that time. And then say to couples, well, we all talk about things like a 7-year itch. Thing changes in marriage over time. Yeah. Thing changes in relationship over time. Build in a review.
Yeah. Okay. Decide
that you're going to, at 7 years, sit down, renegotiate things.
Because
these are actual real contracts.
Yeah. Things change, and I think also people change. Like if I was getting married and I said, let's say 10 years ago, right? And I would say to myself, I would say, okay, yeah, infidelity is out of the question. It's not going to happen. I would not, tolerate it in any shape or form. Then we move in, we get married, we move in together. And then slowly with growing and everything like that, so 10 years, 12 years, maybe 7 years even, I realized that actually, you know what? It wouldn't be such a big deal if he went ahead and cheated on me. It wouldn't be such a big deal as much as I thought 2 or 3 or 10 years ago. Now I know better, it would happen, and we can work through it. So the review idea is actually quite a good one, because you do change. You don't stay the same.
Well, and it's about taking stock of your life.
Yeah.
People lose track of each other. One of the worst times for this is if you have a family and all the children are in the home and all the attention. I mean, one of the things I work with on people is making sure that they keep attention within their relationship as well. Yes. And intimacy in the relationship, and everything isn't all about the kids.
Yes.
But the time when the kids are leaving and suddenly you're left with each other, and you haven't been with each other for at least 18 years.
That's asking for a divorce.
You'd be surprised how many couples just suddenly suddenly have problems then.
Yes.
Because they actually haven't been communicating as
That's
people.
very true.
Only parents. How many couples, and people laugh when I say this, do you actually use your partner's name, or is that mommy or daddy?
That's very true. Oh my gosh, we're going to stop right there and come to part 3 and carry on with that one.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. This is part 3 of a fantastic interview with Dr. Lori Biseby, who specializes in relationships and has been doing so for quite a while. I think you said 28 years, Lori.
Yeah.
And if you haven't listened to part 1 and 2, please go back and listen. There's so much information on there, all about infidelity, adultery, cheating. Can you say once a cheat, always a cheat? The 7-year itch. And now we're just coming into the intimacy part of relationships and how that can pan out and what it means when you don't have it over a few years and you don't realize you actually don't have it in little subtle ways. Okay, Lori, you were saying about how many people don't call their partners names after they have children.
Or love, or sweetheart, or darling, all the nice things that we used to say to them. Now it's daddy or mommy.
Is it really important to say the name as opposed to hi darling, hi sweetheart, hi, to actually say hi person name?
I think it's better. I mean, sweetheart and darling are generic, and they can really, and babe.
Yes. Oh,
really,
I hate babe. I have to say, I hate it.
Hey, baby, come here, baby, or boo, which is like, Lord, where that, I'm sorry. That's my boo over there. No. And it's not a cultural thing. It's just one of those ones I can't stand.
It's come all over, yeah.
Yeah. Depending on the culture, you do get daddy and mommy, and that's a whole other interview.
Yeah.
But it's important that it's personal.
Yeah.
So if you think back to the beginning of the relationship, people come up with pet names for each other that are not love, darling, and boo. There's a special name that your partner gave only you.
Yeah.
Those things drop away. So you can go back to using those things, or you can go back to using the person's name. But it is important that you're connecting with that person again as a full person, as a sexual being, as an emotionally intimate being, not just in the parent role.
Mm.
And it's ever so easy to just see a parent. We're busy, we're working. Our lives are over busy now. We don't make time for each other. We don't make space for each other. And couples come in and they say to me, I shouldn't have to ask. If I have to ask him or remind him that it's my birthday and to get a present, then it's not the same, and it doesn't feel the same, and it's not real.
It's true.
Think about, he can't win then. If he's not somebody who thinks in those terms, and he's not somebody who remembers those things, you've just made it impossible for him to win. And you're not going to get what you want. So it's getting used to the fact we schedule everything else in our lives.
Yeah.
We have to schedule time for this. And are you telling us to schedule sex? And I say, yeah. If you're not having it regularly and you want to be having it regularly, you need to schedule it.
Yeah.
Often things have changed there and the couple don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
And so again, these are the times where people go and look to other people, because it's far too much of a risk to start talking to your partner about new things. If they reject you, that's the whole life you've built.
Yeah. Yeah.
If somebody you barely know rejects you, it's not that big a deal.
Yes, very true. And is it fair to say, you always, well, not always, sometimes you hear when people are struggling with infidelity and they say, if you hadn't done this, if you hadn't been traveling so much, if you made me do it because you said this or you refused this or, something like that. Is it?
No, it's not fair.
Yeah.
But that's what people do. People find it really difficult to take responsibility, and particularly to take responsibility for things that hurt people that they love.
Yeah.
They feel ashamed of that.
Yeah.
So it's always, well, if you would have had sex with me when I asked you to, you never wanted to do this, you never wanted to do that, and so it's your fault I looked elsewhere. Because there are other ways to handle things like that.
Okay.
If your sex life has dropped away and you're not happy with it, then you can, the first place is to figure out what it is you want. that may not be something you do with your partner.
Yeah.
But once you've figured that out, then you need to talk with your partner and renegotiate your relationship. That's the other thing, is that it's amazing how often couples talk about, well, they've had this spark, but they don't actually talk about sex at all. They never have. They just do it. They flirt. They may fantasize at the beginning of a relationship, but they don't talk about what they want. They don't communicate. If you don't talk about it, there's no way that you're going to get what you want. If you don't talk about it, it's down to the other person. If you don't talk about it, it's something magical that happens that then goes away. People talk about, well, I fell out of love. I fell in love, as though it's something that happens. A lightning bolt from the sky came and hit me in the head, and that's how I'm in love. In actual fact, a lot of the things that make us feel we're in love, we have control over.
Yeah.
At the beginning of a relationship, one of the things that happens is you pay immensely intense attention to the other person. That feels great. Somebody is looking at my face all the time. They want to hear, they'll listen to me for hours. They want to spend every minute of time with me. They're touching me all the time. They love every part of me. That's part of that feeling. You can recreate that by actually taking time for the relationship, by exploring together. And one of the things that I do is I have retreats for couples. I have retreats for couples in difficulty to work on the relationship.
Fantastic.
But I have retreats for couples who want to put more excitement and life and joy, bring more intimacy to their relationship. They're not in trouble. They just want things to be as good as or better than they were at the beginning.
Okay. Okay. And when you say that, it's not just sexually, it's the whole couple,
The whole thing.
The whole relationship.
Sex is good. Sex is as time goes on, is largely a function of the ability to communicate, in my experience. So if you can be emotionally intimate, your sex becomes incredible.
Mm.
If you can share on all sorts of other levels, the sexual relationship can be amazing. If there are problems on the physical side, those can easily be fixed as long as you can be emotionally intimate. If there's no emotional intimacy, sex will just be however it is. It can be good, but it's not going to be amazing. And if there's a breakdown, fixing it, almost impossible.
Okay. Is it, I mean, we have these discussions with friends all the time about just what you're saying right there, where you'll find some people in the room will say, I find it really difficult to actually have sex with my partner when he has upset me.
Yep.
And some people say, oh my gosh, that's when I have sex with him because that brings us back together. And
Yes.
Yeah.
And typically, in the past, that used to be a male-female divide. It's not anymore. Men would have sex to bring closeness. Women feel like having sex when they're feeling close. That was always the kind of standard thing. That was, I think, what I was taught about 100 years ago when I was in school. But those are the sorts of things that we talk about. But the reality is that it seems to be, it's not a gender thing.
Okay.
For some people, sex is a way to bring more intimacy. When they have physical closeness, they feel safe so that they can then have emotional closeness. For other people, it's the other way around. So if they're not feeling emotionally close, they don't want you near. But some couples have different kinds of sex. And you think about that. There's makeup sex, which is completely different from sex because I'm feeling emotionally really close to you. Or sex because I'm angry. And yes, couples do have sex as a way of fighting with each other. So if you actually have somebody examine what they do and what's physical intimacy, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And people always think about that's intercourse or that's oral sex or that's sex leading to orgasm.
Yeah. Okay.
There's all sorts of sex.
Seeing that you have been, doing this work for 28 years. So when you start, actually, it's just recently that the internet became part of our lives like never before. And it's a huge part of our lives. And a lot of the times you will find that, apart from people reconnecting on Facebook with their old flames and what have you, and, starting a whole new infidelity side to their lives. But there's this other side where pornography is getting into the relationships. And you find that, and it was being discussed just recently, you find that by watching pornography, then women are beginning to believe that they have to act like the women in the videos, and the men are beginning to think they need to do the same. So there was this whole question about them reconnect. When they come to have sex, they're actually performing, and they're thinking, I need to do it like so and so.
That's actually not new.
Okay.
That's always been an issue. It's just that we've got better access now.
I see. Okay.
Right? Men would look at men's magazines where women were airbrushed and think that's what a woman is supposed to look like. We talk about body hair. I was doing a women's group for a while, and we were talking. It was about claiming your sexuality, and we talked about the whole idea of waxing and shaving and how much you take away and how much you don't, and cultural issues around that, which is a funny topic when you start talking about it, and the ideas around whether when a Brazilian or a Hollywood became really popular, a woman takes all the hair away, and why. And whether it's a visual aesthetic, because in a lot of pornography, the visual aesthetic is no hair or very, very little hair.
Yeah.
Or whether actually the reason for that visual aesthetic and why it came about, there are a couple of different reasons. There is the one more, I think people will consider sinister reason. I consider more sinister reason of trying to infantilize the full-grown woman, make her more like a child, a teenager. Okay, so that's the yuck reason. Yeah. But there's another very practical reason. Lots of hair and oral sex. Lots of hair and repeated sexual intercourse. If you're thinking about for filming. Messy, difficult to clean, more germs. Yeah. Hairs get in your face, hairs get, in your throat, hairs get in your teeth. I mean, these are the sorts of issues that people raise. I know I'm being very graphic, but the practical way of dealing with that is get rid of the hair. And I'm not sure women who have not watched pornography carefully don't notice that men also often lose their hair. There's another reason for that. That can make a man look bigger.
Oh, I
so
see.
There are all sorts of practical, pragmatic reasons that have nothing to do with what we think looks right or good, but then become about what we think looks right or good and that what we expect. So you get men, this is how they expect their women to be. And the first time they see a woman who hasn't touched her pubic hair, they have no idea. Or women who have never seen, in this country, circumcision is not as common.
Yeah.
In the United States, men of a certain age, no matter what cultural background they're from, are circumcised. Yeah. Because during those generations, they were always circumcised. So the first time a woman sees a man, and a lot of pornography men are circumcised.
Okay.
Most pornography men are circumcised. The first time they see a man who's uncircumcised.
What the hell?
Yeah. So there are those sorts of issues that come into it. But also there's the expectation. People forget that pornography is fantasy.
Yeah. That's it.
And so they begin to expect,
this
is reality. My partner can do this for me. We'll do this. Instead of using it, pornography can be a tool. It can be a tool to discuss, learn new things. It can be a tool to laugh. There's nothing more funny than the soundtrack. And the dialogue. I mean, these days there's pornography by women for women.
Okay.
Where there's actually proper dialogue.
Okay.
But, I mean, there is nothing worse than some of the, it's amusing. So it doesn't have to be this horrible thing.
So it doesn't have to come into your bedroom. It doesn't have to affect the way you two make love and have sex. It doesn't have to in a negative way. It can be in a positive way. Don't expect your wife to suddenly become like whoever her name is and your husband to be whoever he is. So Lori, when we come back to part 4, I suppose I've never done like 4 like I said, I could go on a long time because this is a big topic for a lot of people. When we come back, we can look at the question, is it possible to actually avoid, when you're getting married, is it possible to avoid infidelity or adultery? And if it is, how can you do that?
Yeah. Great. See you in a bit.
Welcome back again to part 4 of our interview for the divorcemagazine.co.uk. I'm Soila, and today I'm the founder and editor of the divorcemagazine.co.uk. And today I have Dr. Lori Biseby, who's a relationship expert, and she's been talking to us all about infidelity, adultery. Can a marriage survive infidelity? Can a marriage survive adultery? And, how to know if your partner is cheating. Once a cheat, always a cheat. Is that really true? And you made me do it. We've talked about a lot. So do go back to part 1, 2, and 3. And all the videos are on YouTube or on the divorcemagazine.co.uk, and find out and listen to what it is that Dr. Biseby has to say. I was just saying to you, Lori, that I feel like I would like to get into your head and sit there and just read all this like a book, because you've got so much information and it's so valuable, around this intimacy and relationship and adultery and infidelity. You've been doing it for quite a while. So now, one of the things that I would like us to talk about, we've just finished talking about pornography and the role it can play, or it plays, both negative and positive sides in a relationship. But if somebody, I come to you or somebody comes to you and they're getting married, and they really and they know that infidelity is a real deal breaker for them, and they want to know, how can I avoid infidelity or adultery coming into my marriage? How appropriate a song is that?
And I actually thought that the sound was off, but clearly it was not.
Actually, mine isn't. If it rings, I'll have to jump up and go get it. But yeah, so how can is it possible to avoid it?
I mean, I think it is. I think it's not impossible to avoid it. Is a foolproof. Life happens, so people do. But I think it is possible to do things that make it far less likely. And the first is to make sure that you're really clear, as an individual and as a couple, what constitutes infidelity? Is it that I'm having an intimate conversation with a man and I'm sharing things with him and not with you anymore?
Yeah.
Is that infidelity? Is it infidelity that, pardon me, that I have full-blown sex with somebody, but I don't have a relationship?
Or that I kissed a guy in a club?
And I kissed a guy or I kissed a girl in a club. Mm-hmm. Is it infidelity? Because one of the areas that we haven't talked about is what role sexuality plays in this. And certainly sexuality is far more fluid than we've been led to believe. Mm. And people, because of the exposure to on the internet to all sorts of information, people are far more willing to experiment than they used to be. So there's quite a lot of infidelity that I've seen in couples that are about same-sex infidelity. Mm. So it isn't about, I've gone and I've found another man that I've been involved with, but it's about, I've always wanted to see what it would be like to be with a woman, or I've always found women attractive, but I wasn't willing to act on it. And now I was in the situation where I acted on it. Far different. And the issues might be far different with that. My male partner's response might be far different. They may respond far less to the dishonesty and far more to the fact that it was a woman and not a man. So, I mean, that's a whole separate set of issues. Yeah. But you need to be really clear about that for yourself and clear with your partner. So one of the ways to avoid infidelity is actually talk about it before it happens. Talk about what's important to you in your relationship. I always tell couples that, I know there's some churches require premarital counseling. Yeah. Usually a fairly short thing, but at least they're requiring something. Yeah. I'm always amazed at how little time people spend talking about their relationships, talking about sex, talking about what would infidelity be, what are your deal breakers?
Yes.
If lying is a deal breaker, your partner needs to know that. You need to talk about what that means. You need to talk about how to avoid lying. Yeah. People avoid infidelity when they actually begin to notice when the level of intimacy with their partner is changing.
And it does change, doesn't it? It does change. It's a normal transition journey of a relationship.
Well, if we don't do something to keep it going, it usually changes. I mean, you do get the couples who come in where sex is always fine, no matter what. They argue about everything else, but sex is always fine. But lots of couples come in and sex has
gone out the window.
Yeah, it's disappeared, or they're arguing about sex because one wants this and the other one doesn't. Or so talking about these things it will lower the possibility of infidelity because you're still staying intimate with each other, recognizing that things change, being willing to negotiate about things. People joke about, well, you do the dishes and I'll sleep with you tonight, you know. If you do all of the house cleaning, I'll give you a blowjob. You know, I mean, it's just like, you know, it's funny because people get really surprised when I use sexual terms, but that's one of the problems. We don't.
It's true.
I recently was, because I talk with teenagers too.
Okay. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, and do some not sex education, relationship education.
Yes.
With sex, but I remember this young person telling me that they were having sex education in school and the teacher never used the word sex.
How did they manage that?
Relations.
Oh, okay.
2014. We're talking about relations.
Sessions.
Never said the word penis.
What did he say? Or she?
Male member. We might as well be in Victorian times. I mean, so, you know, we laugh at that, but actually it's quite serious. If you can't talk about what you want, you're not going to get it.
And name it. And we're told that even, you know, with children, little children, it's just better to just name things as they are, as they truly are. There's no point of masking what it is. And actually, I think male member sounds a little bit, you know, it's
kind of scary, really.
It sounds like a weapon.
Oh, I mean, I love the whole, you know, we don't talk about we don't learn how to ask for what we want.
Yeah.
Most of us have shame around the desires that we have. People don't recognize that everybody has fantasies. Yeah. Some of them are very far out that they would never want to enact.
Yes.
They don't learn to put fantasy into their sex lives. You put fantasy in by not acting something out, but by talking to your partner about it.
Yes.
They rarely talk about things. But at the beginning of relationships, we all seem much more confident.
Yes.
And part of that is about the fact that if this person walks away, you're not that invested in them yet. So as my sexuality changes, and I want to try and disclose my deepest, darkest secrets to you, but I'm married to you, and if you reject me, it means a lot more. And I meet this person over here that I don't know from Adam, and we're flirting on the internet. And so I say this really nasty thing. Because I don't care. If they go away, it's not a big deal. And they say, ooh, that sounds like fun. And suddenly you're moving towards infidelity.
Yes.
Without even, it's not,
yeah.
Some people it's planned. It's deliberate. And that also makes a difference in how people get over things. It's a deliberate infidelity versus an intimacy developed because of a fear in being intimate with their partner. Different story.
Yeah.
So part of the way to avoid it is to actually learn how to talk to each other about these things. Learn how to work on your relationship as you go along.
Yeah, and you say what constitutes infidelity, like you said. And then that review thing, I quite like that because I think as you get, and it was written also, I don't know if it was in John Gottman's book or if it was in The Road Less Traveled, about in the beginning where it's really very much about lust. You know, you're lusting after this, but you want to sleep with them and the sex is fantastic and everything like that. But the real marriage, the real relationship comes when, you know, you're actually looking at the person, not because I want to sleep with you, but you're looking at them and seeing this person, all their good bits and bad bits and everything, but you still want to be with them and work at it.
Yeah, and but there, you can also have fabulous sex then. My issue is that we never talk about that bit. We talk about, you know, and we're really intimate, and now that's the real relationship and it's the adult relationship. Well, that can be lots of fun and exciting and intense too.
Yeah.
And you can lust after that person with all their lumps and bumps and because you see the person inside, what you see. Do you know, one of my favorite couples that I ever had the opportunity to spend time with, and it wasn't in a clinical setting, were in their 80s and still having sex.
Fantastic.
And it was the funniest conversation because I was in my 20s and I expressed surprise when I found this out. And the way that I found it out was it was a family member, and I walked past extended family, and I walked past the door in the day and I heard noises. And I was worried that something was wrong because it sounded like somebody was like not feeling well. And I mean, I was in my 20s, so I knew sex. But because they were in their 80s, I didn't consider the possibility that that's what was happening. So I knocked on the door to see what was wrong. And nothing was wrong. I got told to go away, and then we talked about it later. And people, you know, it's like, yes, people do have sex. In the nursing home, it's a big problem.
I've heard people who say that. Yeah.
It shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Really shouldn't, but it is. It's considered a big management problem.
Yeah.
I have friends who work in those settings, and talking to them about what they see is hysterical. So that's the part we don't talk about.
Yeah.
How do we keep this exciting? How do we make sure there's joy in our relationships?
Yeah. How
do we work through the rough spots? Because there will be rough spots. I can tell you that one of the times in my life that was hardest for me was I had been put on steroids. I have systemic lupus, which is something I quite happily talk about, and I had been put on steroids for lupus on a fairly high dose, and I gained about 75 pounds.
Wow.
I was 130 kilos. 135 kilos, I think.
Wow.
Something like that. I didn't look like me. When I looked in the mirror, I also had the moon face from that. I don't know what I saw, but it wasn't me. I didn't want to have sex.
Yeah, true.
My then husband had real issues with that. He desperately wanted to have sex. Or so he said. He loved me. He wanted to still have a sexual relationship. I didn't want anybody to go near me. And it wasn't because I didn't want him. I felt disgusting. I felt horrible.
Mm.
I had to take that somewhere and work on that. I had found a way to lose weight even on the steroids. I found a way to deal with my feelings. I went to see somebody to talk about these issues. But that's not an unusual occurrence in relationships, and people don't talk about it.
Yeah, when you have a baby, your body changes and you're not feeling comfortable. You put on a few pounds, you're not feeling comfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily your partner doesn't want you. It may be you don't want you.
True.
You don't want you. Having sex is a real big problem if you don't feel comfortable with you.
Yeah.
So those are the sorts of things that people need to think about, work on. And even if you do develop a plan, it may go out the window because you're in the situation and you find out you feel totally different. I may say, well, infidelity is a deal breaker. And it happens and it isn't.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or it's not a deal breaker if you do this, this, and this, and it happens, and actually I'm having trouble getting through it.
I can't deal with it. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a degree of learning to be flexible and keeping the ability to communicate present and knowing who you can trust outside of your relationship to process things.
Yes.
So that you can then bring it into the relationship and work in the relationship.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go into our final part because I can see we only have like a minute, and I want you to be able to tell people where they can find you.
Yeah.
And also just anything that you can give as a piece of advice for somebody who's going through or has just discovered infidelity in their relationship, and they're trying to, what would you say to them?
Okay.
Hello, everybody. So here we are, part 5 with Dr. Lori Biseby, and I'm Soila from the divorcemagazine.co.uk. We've already done 4 videos so far, all about can my marriage survive infidelity, or how to survive infidelity and adultery. And now we're at the final part, and please go back and listen to part 1, 2, 3, 4, because there's a lot of information on there from Dr. Biseby. Lori, if, what would you say to somebody who's just discovered that their husband or their wife has been unfaithful to them?
As hard as it may be to not be rash to
Yes.
not immediately
Throw everything out
throw
and kick them
everything
out.
out,
Yeah.
or to not, tear all their clothes up, or, I mean, people do all sorts of things when they discover infidelity. Take a breath. The first thing you need to do, two things actually. The first thing is for you, step back and actually look at your feelings. What are your fears in relation to this infidelity? What does it mean to you?
Yeah.
One of the things that people come up with as a fear is, in this day and age, did you have unprotected sex?
Yeah. Oh,
Sometimes that's
that's
the biggest issue.
yeah.
It's not sex. It's like, oh my God, what disease have they now exposed me
Yeah.
to? Oh my God, did you get somebody pregnant? Or equally, is that you just told me you were pregnant a month ago? Is that child mine? Take a breath. Find a place where you can sort through some of your own feelings before confronting the relationship. Get the information you need about what the infidelity was. Sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes the person's still lying. They're not going to tell you. Dealing with that is a bit different than if you're going to actually get some honest information. Find out what actually happened. Some women feel they need the details. Some men feel they need the details. I would advise in the initial stages, don't ask for the nitty-gritty details.
Okay.
If you feel you need them, you can ask for that later. Excuse me. But find out what actually did 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 your partner actually sleep with this person? They may not have. That may be more manageable. That may not. But find out a little bit of information. I do actually advise people to put a little distance between themselves, but preferably staying within the same home if possible.
Okay, so different bedrooms, you mean?
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean you can't come together to have sex if you're still having sex. It doesn't mean you can't come to decide after a week that you want to try sleeping in the same room again, but just to give each other a little space. And then consider whether you want to talk to a professional. And I do say with people, I would actually consider that fairly early on. Because what people tend to do in cases of infidelity is it's so intense, the betrayal can feel so intense that they act very quickly. And they do and say things they can't take back. And that's the worst bit. I mean, a lot of times we say things that we really don't mean. Sometimes we mean them, and that's a different issue. But we say things that we really don't mean because we know we're going to hurt somebody, and we can't take that back. We can't unsay them.
It's done.
It's done. So it's about taking a little bit of the heat out of it so that you actually have the possibility. You get to make the choice whether you try to push through this. For some people, it's a complete deal breaker. You find out your partner's been unfaithful, and it's like, okay, I'm done. They knew that. They knew that's how I felt at the beginning. I don't want to try to get through this. And that's a valid choice. You don't have to try and work it out. You have that as an option.
Because there's a whole trust issue at the end of the day, isn't there? Can I trust this person again? Can you have a relationship where there's no trust?
In my opinion, no.
No.
People do. They live in the same house where there's no trust. They pretend, but that's not a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Lori,
So,
sorry.
so you have to rebuild it if you're going to go on.
Thank you so much for a fantastic interview. And, as I said, I would love to get into your head and read everything and get to know everything.
No, you don't want to know everything.
No, not everything, actually. I take that back. I just want to know some things.
Yeah.
And again, if you haven't listened to part 1, 2, 3, 4, please go ahead. And Lori, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, they can. You're based in London.
I am. I have office space in London. I do travel around. I do Skype sessions as well.
Brilliant.
My administrative center's in Kent. You can find me on yourtango.com, which is a relationship site.
Okay.
I've got a company called Wolf's Fire Limited, and you can find me there. That's WOLF''S Fire FIRE. You can find me on Facebook, Lori Biseby,
Okay.
On Facebook, and drop me an email,
Okay.
drop me a line, and we can talk about the kinds of things that are scheduled for the next year.
Yeah. Like the
I
couples retreats. I think
like,
those are
yep,
pretty
couples
good.
retreats.
Yeah.
And in fact, I've got three that are tentatively scheduled at the moment.
Okay.
One in the UK and in the Glastonbury area. This is 15, 16. One in Los Angeles.
In what
Uh,
month? The Glastonbury?
Glastonbury was meant to be May, but I think we've put it to the end of October.
Okay. All right.
Uh,
And we'll have all that information on the
on the
yeah,
website,
on
and
the
yeah,
website,
I
and
mean,
I'll put it under the videos as well.
I'll be updating the website sometime in the next couple of days. We'll have the latest
Okay.
schedules. We'll put the latest schedules out.
Okay. So London and LA.
Yes, we've got, well, no, we've got Glastonbury, UK
Oh, I mean
for a
Glastonbury.
retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because we're trying to have nice locations.
Yes.
Los Angeles, we're probably going to be by the beach,
Okay.
and we are talking about the possibility of a kind of
Oh,
mountain
wow.
retreat, which I
Yes.
haven't picked a location for yet. I'm open when if people suggest
Okay.
locations
All
that
right.
they'd like to actually go to work on their relationship and make them more
Yes,
exciting.
true. Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Laurie. Thank you very much. It's just been absolutely brilliant, and um, we'll speak, and I'm sure I'm going to see you soon anyway. Thank you very, very much for being on the divorcemagazine.co.uk.
My pleasure. Take
Thanks.
care.
Bye.
Bye.